consent to revise the extent of my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today we passed the largest spending bill in the history of the United States. And when you add the interest and everything into it, it's going to cost over $1 trillion. I don't think the American people really understand how much $1 trillion is, but it's an awful lot of money. And I want to congratulate my Democrat colleagues on getting this passed. I certainly didn't vote for this bill. I think it's going to be very detrimental to the future economy of these United States. And I think it's going to hurt our economy instead of creating the jobs that it was intended to create. So I think we made a big mistake today, but the Democrats got their bill passed, and they're going to get it passed through the Senate, and it's going to become law, and every American is going to have to live with it. One of the things that concerns me is not only the $1 trillion we spent today, but Mr. Geithner, the Secretary of the Treasury, said the other day that we would have to spend another $1 trillion or $2 trillion or maybe even more to help the financial institutions of this country stay afloat. So we're looking at $2, $3, $4, maybe $5 trillion. And if you look at this chart, Mr. Speaker, it shows the amount of money that's in circulation. And you can see it was pretty consistent at around $1 trillion plus over the last couple of decades. And then just recently, it shot up like a rocket. And that's before all this spending that we put through the House today, or the amount of money that Mr. Geithner is going to spend. And so we're looking at a tremendous increase in the amount of money that's going to be in circulation. Now, one of the things that helps stave off this inflationary problem is that we have people around the world, other countries, that loan us money. For instance, China right now has loaned us $682 billion. That's what we owe them. We owe Japan $577 billion, the United Kingdom $360 billion, just Brazil $130 billion, and China said just the other day that they were very concerned about loaning us money because they said that they didn't think that the currency in the United States would be stable, so the value of their currency would go down. And so they were calling Mr. Geithner, Secretary Geithner, to say, hey, we want some stability here because the value of the currency in our country is going to be depreciated because of what you're doing. Well, a day later, after it was brought up on this floor, they changed their mind and said, well, the only place to loan this money where we have any kind of security is the United States. We're going to continue to loan money. So they're going to loan money to us in the billions and in the trillions of dollars. But the kicker is, how much is the interest going to be that they're going to charge? Because that interest is added to the loan that they're giving us on a month-to-month basis. And I believe they've kicked that interest rate up, so we're going to see an inflationary trend, not only in the money they're loaning to us, but in the interest that's going to be accumulating. I know this is an awful lot for my colleagues to digest and the people across this country who may be paying attention to digest, but let me just say this, Mr. Speaker. It's going to cause an inflationary trend at some point in the future. I think it's going to be earlier rather than later. And when that inflationary trend starts, this chart is going to be minuscule to what we're going to see. We're going to see inflation shoot up at a very rapid rate, which means that the value of the dollar that every American has in their bank or in their home is going to be devalued. That means if you buy a car for $30,000, it may cost $60,000 or $90,000. If you buy a loaf of bread, it may cost 2 or 3 times as much or more. That's called hyperinflation. This happened back in the 1970s when we had a very similar situation to what we have today. We had double-digit inflation, double-digit unemployment, and they raised the interest rates to 21% to stop all this. That may happen again, and if it does, it'll put a real hammer on the economy and put more and more and more thousands and millions of people out of work. But the problem is, early on, is the inflation that we're going to have to deal with. This is a problem that's very real, and I hope my Democrat colleagues will think ahead and realize that we have to do something to stifle the growth in government and the spending, because we're not going to be able to deal with this inflation as we should. And our kids and our grandkids and the future generations of this country are going to have to pay not only with inflation, with higher taxes and a lower quality of life. And that's something we shouldn't have to deal with, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. George Miller, California. Without objection. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Saturday, February 7th, the Washington Post reported that a Turkish Islamic-oriented human rights group, the Association of Human Rights and Solidarity for Oppressed Peoples, known as Muslim Dare, initiated a probe to investigate if war crimes and genocide were committed by Israel during the recent Gaza conflict. I was startled to read that Muslim Dare plans to investigate 19 Israelis, including Prime Minister Olmert, President Perez, Foreign Minister Levini, and Defense Minister Barak, for orchestrating genocide.